Hi, Alex, and very good to see you after a long time. I think it's been probably like 1 month that we haven't been able to talk to each other. Um, so today we're going to talk about how different cultures respond to trauma, and I would like you to tell us, based on your experience from different cultures, and investigate this topic and explore this topic and see what we can get at the end of this session. Very warm welcome.
Great. Thanks, Fahim. Yep, it's been a while. I've been traveling and on the road, and I'm finally situated in a comfortable place so we can have a nice chat. It's great to see you again.
Okay, so tell us about the different cultures that you have experienced in Asia, in America, and tell us how these cultures usually respond to trauma.
Sure, yeah. So, unfortunately, I don't think I can actually say that, Asian cultures respond the same way because within Asia, there's actually sometimes quite a big difference. So, like Thai culture and Japanese culture are much more polite and um, I want to say superficial, but I know that sounds bad. But uh, they're very sensitive to social situations, the face, the feelings of others. And one thing I see in both of these cultures, in Thailand and Japan, is that when someone, especially me as a foreigner, if I do something awkward or rude, which is like a little mini trauma, but anything slightly bad that happens, they will kind of giggle like nervously. And yeah, and it seems like where this comes from is they want to respond with humor or humility, because if they don't, they might respond with anger, and that can turn into violence and get very bad. So it seems they've evolved over, I think, a very long time, a sophisticated way to respond, which is maybe a bit strange to me and others as Westerners and Americans and whatever else, but it actually works quite well. And then there's the other kind of predominant Asian culture, China, India, Vietnam, which is just in your face, kind of bring it on. We'll take on anything, thick skin, trauma, big trauma, small trauma, whatever. We'll just deal with it, we'll handle it. And uh, it can get bloody and whatever else, but we'll just take all the punches and do the best we can.
So that's just about a small trauma. How about a big trauma? What would happen in that situation?
Well, in terms of a big societal trauma, we're in it right now. COVID-19 is like as big as it gets, basically. I mean, I think it'll get worse, but um, not soon. But like we're in the middle of a global event, which is which is traumatic in different ways. There's there's the medical impact, people getting sick. There's the economical impact, people losing money, losing their job. So how are people responding? So India, they're I think a great example of what not to do right now. So um, you can see videos of this. Indian policemen are just beating people on the streets because this is how they enforce social distancing and other rules. They don't even waste the time to like start reasoning with people. They just get a big stick and they just start beating you with it. Um, and it is actually effective. So I don't want to say this is not the way to do it, because within Indian culture, this is not so bad, actually. It's kind of, they don't actually bruise people. It's just like it's like training a dog or something. It's just like a light little whack to kind of wake you up, right? Um, And so it's kind of strange, right? It's like they're responding to trauma by bringing in more trauma of a different kind.
Do you think that that response works in a country like India? Well, you have been there, you know about it.
In a sense, yeah, it does work, and it is effective, and it's not even that it's if it's effective or ineffective, it's kind of the only way forward with to really get stuff done, because India has so many different cultures and religions living and ethnicities all living next to each other in the same neighborhood that for they have kind of a independence. It's very democratic, right, and independent in a sense. So to get everyone across all these different subcultures to unite under one thing, it's very rare, and it's very hard to do. I think the only way they've been able to sustainably do that recently is just by speaking English. That's, I think, their main way to actually come together in some fashion is just, let's just speak English, so at least we have the same language. And if you need, and there's a lot of corruption and bribery, so just because a policeman says go follow this law, they might just say no, I'm not going to do that, and then the policeman will say, well, I'm too lazy to enforce it, and so everyone just does whatever they please. So there's a lot of social freedom in India, and China is like this too, although it's becoming much less free as time goes on. But um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So um, I've got two questions. You said it will get worse. This trauma will get worse. Um, what do you mean by that? I was expecting to have the vaccine and the you know the remedy for this COVID-19 by mid next year, but you say it's getting worse.
the only true remedy is time. Much like any other disease, the Black Plague, swine flu, tuberculosis, cancer, like anything you can imagine, the only thing which is a permanent cure is just time. And that's what's actually going to do it. The vaccine won't actually do that much. I think it'll actually cause more problems in the same way that the lockdowns are causing more problems than they're actually helping. And then it'll also make different kinds of problems. So already right now in most countries in the world, if you go to a big store, you have to wear a mask. They screen your temperature. So that's psychological trauma, actually, compared to what we're used to doing by just walking into a store. By imposing these measures, it's it's restricting freedom, which to someone who values their freedom, it's a form of trauma, basically. I don't know if trauma is the best word, but um, these sorts of things will continue. They may get worse in some countries, better in others. It'll depend a lot, but um, it kind of reminds me of 9/11, actually, where um, from that day onward, airport security just got very, very strict. And even though we didn't see any big terrorist attacks like that in years, we still have really strict airport screening all over the world, basically. So we're going to see stuff like that from this.
Yeah. But well, if you think that these measures are restricting the freedom, if we don't follow these measures, these steps, um, the consequence might be death of people, infected to COVID-19, to this virus.
Right. So it depends where you're coming from. I'm coming primarily from a spiritual perspective, meaning people are going to die anyway. And it's not my karma, it's not my business. Um, I'm doing the best I can for myself and those around me by just being healthy in a systemic way, not an acute way, meaning um, fruits and vegetables, exercise, vitamins, and yeah, sure, it's simple and it's a holistic approach as opposed to like an acute solution like a vaccine. That's a very specific acute solution, which does and can work well if you have an acute condition. But if, like me, you don't have anything like that, and you're not sure if you do or don't have some virus, and it's like, you know, there's no symptoms or something like that, the best thing I can do is actually just be healthy and not make any big risks.
Okay, back to your discussion about India. So you mentioned about the measures that the police have been following, you know. Um, so I would like you to compare those restrictions in India with the ones in China and in the US, as you have been to those two places.
Right. Yeah. So I've been in China for most of this year. And in China, there's two Chinas basically. There's Wuhan and Hubei province, which at some points was like extremely strict military control, draconian, tyrannical, just like nothing I can imagine. And then there's the rest of China, which is just each region is kind of doing it their own way. So I was in Fujian province across from Taiwan on the southeast coast. And I was living in a pretty low risk area, a smaller city. So it was really not that strict. I would have to get my temperature checked and wear a mask to walk into stores, to big stores, to small local stores. Most local people don't care that much. Um, there's not a lot of social pressure. If you're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, people don't stare at you and like judge you or anything like that. It's kind of, um, they have I want to say like autonomous way of, there's like an overarching principle or law. It's not a law, it's more like a principle that they follow of like, all right, maintain distance a little bit, wear the mask when you can, and they follow that principle, but the details of it are very much up for grabs and totally changes by person to person pretty much. And also store to store, some stores, they were just closed for like a long time, and other stores not. It was really strange seeing how like some restaurants would open and close at different times than others. It didn't seem like there was much of a logic to it all. Um, so a big thing in China is guanxi, which means connections, or your relationships that you have. So if you know a guy in the police department who says, "Oh yeah, you can open. We're not going to bother you now," then that store might be open and getting more business for a while. And this is actually how China has been operating for thousands of years. They're not actually much into law. It's more about guanxi, relationships, family. This is actually how their culture works most of the time.
And that's how they actually respond to big traumas like this.
Right. Yeah. So, oh, here's a great example. So in America, there's many celebrities that are coming out saying, "Oh, I think I got COVID-19 and I'm sick," and there's big people in the culture saying this. In China, absolutely not. It's the opposite. If they started seeing, uh, high value people, celebrities or other people in government getting sick, then they would go, "Oh man, it's really bad," and it would infect the whole culture. Billions of people would all just go nuts at the same time. I can't imagine could be panic, could like what we saw in America and Western countries of like hoarding toilet paper. You would probably see that in China if like Jackie Chan and died from COVID-19. If something like that happened, I mean, there would be a huge response. But nothing like that happened. So they didn't respond. There was no hoarding. Um, there, the people were overall very calm, at least where I was, which was more of a low risk area. Like I said, in Wuhan, I mean, it's a different story, but.
Mhm. So comparing China and India, tell us about these measures and response in the US to this trauma.
Okay, so an important thing here is language. So in America, I mean, we invented a whole new vocabulary just to deal with this trauma. Things like, and by America, I mean actually the American media. There's plenty of people like myself who are purposely not following this and not using this language. But for example, flatten the curve, social distancing, um, stay home, stay safe. Like these are like memes too, even like these are, it's a very, it's propaganda basically. Um, but it's also like, for example, social distancing. We've never used that term before. And it's a very strange term because we know what social means, we know what distancing means, and they're contradictory. So when you combine them together, it actually doesn't make sense. Whereas if you say physical distancing, this makes sense and is appropriate for like a virus that's spreading around.
Mm.
So social distancing, if we go by the dictionary, it really means don't be friends anymore. Don't be friendly. Don't be kind to your neighbor. It means let's be antisocial. Let's, hey buddy, you're going to get me sick. You're my enemy now. That's what it technically means, I think, according to the dictionary. But it's spread through the media in a way that you're supposed to think, oh, you're doing the right thing and you're saving lives. Anyway, compared that with China, much like every other Chinese word, this this virus, this condition, it's not called coronavirus. It's not called COVID-19. It's just like bingda. It's two syllables. It's very easy to say, and like common characters that they all understand. They don't sugarcoat it with some fancy scientific thing. It's just the flu. They basically just call it like a flu. And
Binda.
I don't actually remember the Bing means like
Mm.
Bing is a common word for like a cold or a flu. And then there's one
Okay.
other syllable, which I never learned because they don't talk about it that much either. So that's why I never learned about it. Um,
So they don't use COVID-19 in China.
no, no, never. Yeah, because I would, when you say like, for example, like California in Chinese
Yeah.
is like California.
Mm.
So you can hear that they're using a foreign word in their language. There's no, I never heard anything like that. SARS, Corona, COVID, they never use any of these words. They just say like the flu, basically.
Mm. So the terminology around this area is different in China as well.
Yes, I would say that mainland China and America or English speaking countries, also Canada and others are similar, are the polar opposites. I'm not sure how it's like in India with the language, but comparing China to Anglo-Saxon nations, I think it's polar opposite. Where on the one side you see a group of the Anglo-Saxon nations just making up new words and combining words in ways we haven't seen before, and then like really pushing it on the masses. Use these words. Don't treat this as a special thing that you have to talk about it in a special way. And then China just says, oh yeah, it's the flu. Like we've had this before. We know what this is. Just kind of wash your hands a few times and we'll get over it soon.
And it's part of the strategy of the response to this trauma, isn't it, in China?
I mean, it's definitely a part of it. I can't say it's not a part, but I also know, I don't know how smart their their leadership actually is and how lazy they are, because I also know it's part of their culture. For example, the Great Wall of China. In English, this is a very glorious, long name, right? But in Chinese, it's Changcheng. It's, which literally translates to long wall. That's it. Not even the long wall, not the longest wall, not the famous long wall. It's just long wall. Hey, you go to Beijing, you go long wall. You know, it's a wall and it's long. You go see it, you like it. See, it's this super simplification of everything, which and they're just doing the same way. They're just exercising that same culture, that same linguistic tendency with coronavirus, just like everything else, because they're Chinese. So I don't know how much of it is actually the plan of the leaders and how much of it is just their culture just living naturally.
Yeah, well, part of it might be because that COVID-19 is started initially from China. So it was them who started to generate new terminology for dealing with this, trauma, rather than waiting for WHO, to
Yeah.
provide the related terminology or related helpful advice and stuff like that. So it was them who started this trend, this style of dealing with this trauma in China. I think that's partly because of the fact that it started in China first. But whereas when we see in other languages, like in Arabic and Persian, we simply see that all kind of these terminologies are actually translated from English into Persian or even in Arabic. When it comes to some words related to social distancing, physical distancing, so they're all translation, the product of translation. Whereas, as you mentioned in China, it's not translation.
Interesting. So when you talk to your parents about this, um, in Farsi, right, you'll say things like COVID-19. Like how would you?
So COVID-19, so 19 as it is a word, as a number, changes to um, its equivalence in Farsi, which is nuzda. So we say COVID nuzda, or we simply use corona, meaning coronavirus.
Right. Yeah, that's what I do in English too. I just say Corona. It sounds funner and it's simpler. Yeah, so like Iran and it reminds me of a lot of other European nations are doing the same thing. Italy, Germany, um, yeah, they're doing the same thing you're saying. They're taking the English words, translating it to their language, and even as a foreigner who can't speak Farsi, I can actually pick out what you're talking about. Whereas, yeah, in China, you don't
In
have a
China,
clue.
you wouldn't know that. You
Yeah,
wouldn't know
you'd
they're talking
never
about
know.
COVID-19.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't hear it
Yes.
a single time, any word like that.
Mhm. Okay, good. That was a great discussion. I enjoyed it, to be honest. We talked about how countries respond to traumas culturally and how they respond to traumas linguistically. And that was really precious. And I enjoyed talking about it. Thank you so much, Alex. It was great to have you with us today. And I look forward to our next interview next time.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Fahim. I'll see you again soon.
See you next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.